Hi there and welcome to the Tour Guides Travel Guides Talking Head Sessions. My name is Rich Jones, professional tour guide, and if it is about trust, I am your man 100%. Today is the 29th of October. It's important, remember that for later on. We find ourselves up here at the Marie Antoinette viewpoint outside the historic town of Towanda, Northeast Pennsylvania. Now, just down below us, we've got the Susquehanna River and the River Valley, and just on the other side, you might just be able to make out a collection of buildings over in the distance that make up the fabulous visitor attraction that is the French Azilum. It was a refuge for a group of French exiles that settled here in the autumn of 1793. Now, before we get into the meat and bones of the story, I'd like to give you a little poem here written by a lady called Eliza Arnoux, who was actually one of the original settlers here in 1793. It goes something like this, that high above the winding river, in a flood of morning sunlight, near the lodge of Rock Mount Sunrise, oft I gaze forgetful as I gaze across Azilium, rock-bound vale of dreams pathetic. Now, a bit of background before we actually head on down there. The American Revolution had happened not long before Azilium was founded. Now, it could be argued that French support for the American cause against the English was actually a catalyst for the French Revolution itself. Okay, let's have a look at that then. You've got a huge amount of financial support from France for the American cause against the English. You've got a crippling famine in mainland France. So the lower classes and the starving masses rose up in protest against the royalty and the aristocracy. In fact, the Queen herself, Marie Antoinette, didn't help matters at all by declaring, or reputedly declaring, that let the peasants eat cake rather than bread. So riots and execution by guillotine were commonplace. In fact, the Queen herself, Marie Antoinette, was executed before she could actually escape out here. Now, there's a secondary problem in the French colonies as well. There was the mulatto and slave uprisings in Santo Domingo, which is now known as Haiti. So, of course, more refugees were coming in. Now, the first refugees were coming into the great cosmopolitan city of Philadelphia, where they were welcomed with open arms. Now, here's the thing. The French aristocracy very quickly realised, or they felt, that the Americans were uncivilised and unrefined. I see nothing changes there with the French then, hey? So, of course, they moved on. Under the guidance of their leader, the Marquis Omer Talon, moved out to this area of land that was set aside for them. Of course, on the 29th of October 1793, they arrived here. Now, the burning question I've been asking myself since I first came across this place is why here? Because we've got to consider that in the 18th century, up here in North Pennsylvania, this was relative wilderness. So to answer that question and many more, we're going to head down there and we're going to meet a remarkable lady called Lee, who is the curator of the visitor site at Azilium, and she'll be able to answer all those questions for us. Okay, so Lee, hi, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Rich. How are you today?
Good to see you. Thanks for having us over today.
It's wonderful you could come.
Well, we were just talking to the folks back at home there, done an introduction to the French Azilum, and there was only one person we could come and talk to answer this question for us. Is, okay, why here? Why is the Azilum here?
Well, why not here? We have to put your imagination on and roll back in time. And so you're come to Philadelphia, and it's a really busy city. And so we had all these adventurers before, and so they're like, the French won't make out okay in the city, and it's so close, we're a new country, not really sure if we should put him there. So let's go out a little further. We had a lot of, expeditions and adventures out here, and they found this wonderful area of 1,900 acres, all wooded. So they decided that what they could do is build a place for the French to come and live, to be an asylum for them, for rescuing them, because they helped us. So they cleared about 220 acres, and they put up about 50 two-story log cabins with wallpaper and glass windows. So they tried to make it as comfortable as before how they lived, and that was the best they could do for the area. Now, a lot of people think because the French were, very well taken care of and had, like all the grand comforts that they wouldn't make out well here. But they did great. They had everything. They had a theater, they had a church, they had a school, they had 3 inns and a bakery and a blacksmith shop. So there was many things happening here.
Right. So what was the heyday? What was the population?
We believe what we have found through research that there has been roughly about 100 people that lived at the highest point.
Excellent. So they arrived in 1793, 29th of October. Because today is 29th of October, we're doing the anniversary. How long did they stay?
They stayed for 10 years.
So 1803 was the end of it all. Okay, so why did they leave?
Well, one of the big reasons why they left was there was a lot going on with the French and American trade, and so that became an issue of getting items. And when Napoleon said, hey, you're granted amnesty, you're not going to be guillotined, you're ready to come back, the people that were still here that hadn't passed away, they decided they really missed their grandiose lifestyle.
Right.
And said, we're going back. And so they did. So there was a few families that stayed, the Laportes, the Omis, the Brevostes, and Lefevres.
Yeah. So essentially, Napoleon granted some kind of amnesties for the aristocracy to come back. Presumably, that's something to do with it. Now, of these families that stayed, I mean, I've heard sort of reading of 3 major families, was it 5? But certainly the names you just mentioned there, the Homais, the Laportes, the Lefevres. What did they do?
Okay, so we have John Laporte, who is the second part of the history here. And as you know, he was a U.S. congressman.
Right.
He was also the general surveyor of Pennsylvania. He was a banker in Towanda and an associate judge. He was born in the Azilum. He was actually lived in the Queen's house. And he was basically left the property that was left here to take care of. And that is how we became the John Laporte house, because his wife wanted something grander than the Queen, so he built this home here for her. And so John Laporte, was famous for his, political business he did and those kind of things. But he made his original money farming here. So that was back in the day when you could make money farming.
Yeah.
And so then we have Charles Omy, the Omy family. And when you research back into them, you'll see that they have the Omy Mills, the Omy Ferry. And so they were very big in, like bringing this area, more active and more, like more of a broader community. Because before it was just centered here at the Azilum. So then just with those 2 families, it spread out. Right.
So I'm actually going to be heading over to Omais Ferry, which is a little settlement just on the other side of the river from here, because I believe that Omais were actually running a mill and a ferry till the 1930s. I mean, relatively recently, if you think about things. And
yes, they were.
Yeah. Interesting story about this. I think I'm right in saying this, but from Charles Homais, he was he the King's steward in France?
Yes, he was.
Yeah. His escape was quite dramatic, and there's another one Lee's going to tell us about momentarily. But Homais, I believe that the night before his ship was sailing from France, he put his personal possessions on the ship, thinking it'd be at the quayside the next morning, when in fact it wasn't, was it? It was like a couple of miles out to sea.
Yes,
so 5 miles out to sea. So he actually had to go and swim that. 5 miles in any language, that's a dedication itself. So, but the great story is that the Marquis Omer Talon, his escape was equally as dramatic and quite a remarkable story, because it's linked to the Laporte family as well. Lee, could you?
Yeah, actually what's really interesting about that is John's father, Bartholomew, he was actually a winemaker in Spain. He was born in France, but he went to Spain and became very famous there in Spain. And so while he was there, of course, the French and the Spanish are always fighting. So they got in an argument again and were shipping all the French home. So he had met, the Marquis, and so he's there, I'm going to be guillotined. You got to get me to England. And he said, I'll help you. I'll hide you in the wine cask. So he hit the Marquis in the wine cask, got him to England, and then he said, I'm going to pay you back by giving you passage to America. So that's how John's father, Bartholomew, got here, because he wasn't an aristocrat.
Right.
And he wasn't part of the royal, court
Entourage, yeah.
So he became a settler here.
Yeah. Phenomenal story. That's crazy. I mean, the dedication and the passion, to get out and create that new life is it's staggering today's language. It really is, isn't it? So, Lee, I guess you've probably been asked this 1,000 times, but the question is, Marie Antoinette, the Queen's house, was she going to come or wasn't she? What's your view on that one?
Well, I would ask you, if you were like the Queen, and the steward of the king came here, Charles O'Mee, would you want to follow him?
Well, my opinion about this, my belief is the answer would be yes.
Okay, and then go a little further and ask yourself, what about all the other aristocrats?
Well, exactly. There's the point. I mean, let's look at some of the names that actually came here during the time we're talking about. That great, is it Talleyrand, bishop, foreign minister, political mover and shaker. He came here, and of course, the future king or the king of the French, the citizen king, Louis Philippe. He came here.
Yes.
The names just go on and on and on.
Many dignitaries, and Madame d'Autremont was living here for a period of time, and she brought her boys, even though her husband was guillotined, back in 1793. When Talleyrand came to visit, her son actually went back to France and worked for him. So they had this strong, connection, to France and the royal family.
Yeah.
And so why wouldn't she want to come? You have to ask yourself, if, Charles O'Mee swam to that ship.
Absolutely.
He was, sometimes people believe it's just for them to do that, to save his life. But he was so indebted to the king because that was his responsibility to come and get everything ready here. So I definitely believe she would come.
Now, I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, before we came down here, that wonderful poem by Eliza Arnoux when the exiles first arrived here. But in 1803, she wrote another one for when news came back that Napoleon was welcoming the aristocracy back. It was like cries of "Vive la France." I wanted to have a little look at that poem. Okay, so this is one I think you know pretty well, but it was: peace restored and warfare ended, many Frenchmen left asylum, sailed away with hearts a-flowing, sought their homes in native country. Thus the village was deserted, save a few who loved asylum, loved the sheltered little valley, made their homes and cast their future with America, the free land, with their newly adopted land.
Yeah, it's an incredible poem because it's so true. Like the ones that did stay, they were extremely attached.
Yeah.
And without them staying, there's like many things, like you think like culture-wise, like even John Laporte himself, he was born in America, but he was brought up French in America. Like they were just very, very proud people. And so we've gotten a lot of things that, like a lot of dress and just things we take for granted that we may not have had. Like when they did an archaeological dig here, they found a lot of silverware. We didn't have silverware. We were not eating with silverware out here in the wilderness. So, just simple things like silverware, we got way ahead of time.
Yeah.
And, like many basic things that we take for granted.
I feel since I've been, having a look at this site, it's really got under my skin. I've got a passion for it, but you can see the passion that Lee's got for this wonderful job she does as a curator here. But I feel that, coming down here, particularly actually at the site, it has an aura that's quite unique. And I feel that both sides of this poem are quite relevant because it does have a feel of, what the exiles would feel, a kind of displacement from a certain haunting loneliness, but on the other side it has a feel of a very comforting feel. And I feel that line there, that the people that love this valley, the O'Mees, the Laporte, the Autremonts, that it would have had a hold and a passion. I feel that. I guess
it's amazing, and you really have to come here to see it because there's something about the draw when you're standing here. And then you can think back, and when you look around, you see, well, this is why it was picked. We're surrounded by water. It was all wilderness. It's like this private community that's so well protected and nobody could get to. And there was just such a comfort for them.
Yeah.
And it is amazing, but you really can't tell unless you're here.
That's right.
There's just something about being here that kind of draws you in.
Oh, it's got a unique feeling. There is absolutely no question about that. And there's a few other sites around the world that I go to that I can say there's a similar sort of feeling. It's a sort of like haunting loneliness, yet beauty. And a comfort as
like
well.
The Colosseum.
Stonehenge is one, for example.
Yes.
Yeah, but anyway, Lee, listen, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure as always. One question I did want to ask you, and particularly for the viewers, is the chance to sell the asylum. Why should people come here? Why what can you give people when they come here? What kind of an experience? I mean, it's an important place.
It is really important because like America is very new at preserving their history. So we don't really we have like Philadelphia and we have Colonial Williamsburg, but we have very few places, unlike Europe, who preserve everything. We kind of tear down. And so coming here helps us preserve the site for future generations, because history is what keeps us going. And so by you coming, we share it with you, you share it with others, and then we all become passionate about it, and we could save, our history that we have just started to save.
Right, absolutely. I mean, I think that's exactly the nail on the head there, because I mean, a lot of people, particularly Americans that I talk to and deal with in my profession, is they say, oh, the Americans, they've got no history. Well, I tell you what, I tend to disagree with that now, because I think you really do need to come and see this place, because this is history right here in a proper sense of the word. Lee, you're doing a phenomenal job here, and I really do think people should come and see this. So thanks for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you.
And so in conclusion, I think the word heritage yet again springs to mind. Heritage is what we receive from our predecessors and how we deal with that inheritance in our lifetimes, and our responsibility to pass on that inheritance to future generations. Well, here we are at the end of the journey, really. This is Homet's Ferry, or what was once Homet's Ferry, and the mill, staying in the family since up until the 1930s, but as you can see, just really a boat launch these days. But take across the shallowest crossing point of the Great Susquehanna River back in the days of the French Azilum. Well, again, if you've enjoyed that presentation of the French Azilum, there's more to come. You can follow me, Rich Jones, on Facebook, share, like me, or subscribe to my YouTube channel. I've been Rich Jones, the Tour Guide's Travel Guide. Keep travelling, stay safe, and I hope to see you on the next edition of the Talking Heads.
Gregory Jones. Well, you did see the friendly man, Daddy. Rich Jones, he's my daddy.